I want to tell you something right now that will change everything you think you know about time and miracles. Close your eyes with me for just a moment. Can you feel it? That tingling sensation in your chest? That whisper in your soul that says something magnificent is already unfolding? That feeling isn't hope. It isn't wishful thinking. That feeling is recognition. Your higher self knows something your conscious mind is just beginning to remember. 2026 isn't waiting for you somewhere in the future. It's here. It's now. It's breathing through these very words. And tonight, as you surrender into sleep, you're going to activate something so powerful within yourself that when you wake, you won't be the same person who closed their eyes. I've spent my life studying the hidden laws that govern this universe, the invisible architecture that determines who receives miracles and who remains stuck in limitation. And what I've discovered will sound absolutely radical to some and deeply familiar to others. The truth is this: time as you understand it is the greatest illusion ever sold to humanity. You've been taught to wait for the right moment, wait for circumstances to align, wait for permission from the universe. But I'm here to tell you that waiting is the weapon your fear uses to keep you small. Every single thing you desire for 2026 already exists, not as a possibility, not as a potential, but as a present reality in the invisible realm. Your dream relationship is already formed in divine substance. Your financial abundance is already gathered and waiting. Your healed body is already whole in truth. Your creative breakthrough is already complete. The only question that matters is this: are you going to tune your consciousness to the frequency where these realities live, or are you going to keep broadcasting the old station of lack and limitation? Tonight is not about getting comfortable and drifting off to sleep like any other night. Tonight is about activation. You are going to imprint your subconscious mind with the truth of who you really are and what's truly available to you. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what you vividly imagine and what you physically experience. It simply accepts what you persistently feel as truth and begins to reorganize your entire reality around that truth. This is not metaphor. This is the literal mechanics of creation. I know some of you are carrying so much heaviness right now. Perhaps you've been betrayed. Perhaps you've lost something precious. Perhaps you've tried and failed so many times that hope itself feels dangerous. I understand. I've walked through my own valleys. But here's what I know with absolute certainty. Your valley, your darkness, your breaking point, this is not evidence of your unworthiness. This is the sacred preparation. This is the fertile ground where miracles grow. You haven't been forgotten. You've been chosen for something so beautiful that it required the breaking open of everything false within you. So breathe with me now. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. You don't have to figure anything out tonight. You don't have to be strong or brave or certain. You only need to be willing. Willing to receive, willing to release, willing to remember that you were born from the same creative power that spins galaxies and orchestrates seasons. That power lives in you, not near you, not above you. In you, as you. And tonight, we're going to wake it up. Let me share something with you about miracles that most people completely misunderstand. They think miracles are rare events that happen to special people in extraordinary circumstances. But the truth is so much more magnificent than that. Miracles are the natural order of existence. The unnatural thing is the limitation you've been experiencing, the struggle you've normalized, the lack you've accepted as just the way things are for you. You were designed to live in a constant flow of good. Abundance is your birthright. Joy is your natural state. Synchronicity is supposed to be your daily experience. But somewhere along the way, you absorbed beliefs that closed you off from this flow. You learned to see yourself as separate from the source of all good. You began identifying with your circumstances instead of your divine nature. And that misidentification became your prison. But here's the beautiful truth that I want to sink deep into your awareness tonight. No matter how long you've been imprisoned by false beliefs, your liberation is only one realization away. One shift in consciousness can undo years of suffering. One new thought, truly felt and embodied, can restructure your entire life. And 2026, this year, this moment, this breath, carries a special potency for transformation. There are certain moments in time when the veil between the visible and invisible world becomes thin, when divine assistance is abundant and available, when the universe itself conspires to lift you into your next level. This is one of those moments. Not because the calendar says so, but because you've been brought to this message right now. Your higher self orchestrated this meeting between us. Nothing about you being here is random or accidental. I want you to understand something powerful about your thoughts. Every thought you think is a prayer. Every word you speak is a decree. Every feeling you hold is a magnet. You are not a passive observer of your life. You are the active creator of it. And most people are creating unconsciously, repeating the same tired thoughts, speaking the same defeated words, feeling the same familiar emotions, and then wondering why nothing ever changes. But you're different. The fact that you're here, listening to these words, means you're ready for conscious creation. You're ready to take dominion over your inner world so that your outer world can transform. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in a way that feels natural and doable, not forced or fake. Your subconscious mind is listening right now with rapt attention. It doesn't judge or argue, it simply receives and obeys. And for the next hour and beyond, we're going to feed it the highest truth. We're going to saturate it with images of your fulfilled desires. We're going to drench it in the feeling of your answered prayers. We're going to program it with absolute knowing that your good is already done. Some of you have been speaking defeat over your life for so long that your words have become thick walls around you. You say things like, "I never have enough money. Relationships never work out for me. I always get sick this time of year. My family has always struggled with this." And darling, every time you speak these words, you are using the most creative power in the universe to reinforce your prison. Your word is your wand. You are literally casting spells with every sentence. The question is, are you spelling out your liberation or your limitation? Tonight, we break that pattern. Tonight, you reclaim your voice as an instrument of blessing. Tonight, you learn to speak as the creator you truly are. And I promise you, when you change your words, you change your world. It's law. It's inevitable. It's already done in the realm of causes, even if you can't yet see it in the realm of effects. Now, let me tell you a story that illustrates this truth in a way that will stay with you long after this night ends. There was a woman who came to me many years ago, and I could see her life written in the tension of her shoulders. She was exhausted from trying, depleted from hoping. She'd prayed for years for her situation to change, but nothing moved. Her finances remained tight, her relationships remained painful, her health remained fragile. And she said to me with tears in her eyes, "Florence, I've done everything. I've prayed, I've visualized, I've affirmed. Why won't God help me?" And I looked at her with all the love in my heart and said something that shocked her. God is helping you every moment. The divine substance is constantly pouring toward you, but you have a blocked receiver. You're standing under a waterfall of abundance with an umbrella of fear held tightly over your head, wondering why you're still thirsty. She looked at me confused, so I explained. Every time you pray for something you desire, you're simultaneously affirming that you don't have it. Every time you visualize your wish fulfilled, you follow it immediately with worry about how it will happen or doubt that it ever will. You're giving with one hand and taking away with the other. You're planting seeds in the morning and digging them up in the afternoon to see if they've grown. Your consciousness is divided, and a divided consciousness cannot receive. This woman sat with that truth for a long moment, and then she asked the most important question she'd ever asked. So what do I do? How do I become undivided? And I told her what I'm going to tell you tonight. You stop treating your desires like distant hopes and start treating them like present facts. You stop begging the universe for what you want and start thanking it for what's already yours. You stop asking if or when and start declaring it is done. She was skeptical, as you might be right now. But she was also desperate enough to try something radically different. So we worked together to create a new inner conversation. Instead of saying, "I hope I can pay my bills," she started saying, "My supply is endless and immediate." Instead of worrying about her health, she started declaring, "I am vibrant, whole, and divinely energized." Instead of focusing on past relationship failures, she started affirming the right relationship is already established in divine mind and now manifests in perfect timing. And do you know what happened? Within 3 months, her entire life had rearranged itself. An unexpected inheritance came through, solving her financial pressure. A health protocol she'd tried before suddenly worked, and her chronic condition cleared. and she met someone who treated her with the respect and love she'd been declaring was already hers. Was this luck? Coincidence? No, darling. This was law. This was consciousness rearranging circumstances. This was the universe responding to a clear, consistent vibration. You have that same power available to you right now, not someday. Not when you're more spiritual or more worthy. Right now, this moment, as you are. Because worthiness isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. You are an individualized expression of infinite creative power. The same intelligence that designed your eyes to see and your heart to beat is available to design your finances, your relationships, your health, your entire experience. You don't have to know how. You only have to know that it is. Let me go deeper into this, because I want you to truly understand the mechanics at play here. There is an invisible substance that fills all space. Some call it divine mind. Some call it the quantum field. Some call it God. The name doesn't matter. What matters is understanding that this substance is responsive. It takes the shape of your consistent thoughts and feelings. It molds itself around your dominant beliefs. It is the clay, and your consciousness is the sculptor. Right now, in this very moment, you are sculpting. Whether you're aware of it or not, you're giving shape to tomorrow's experiences with today's thoughts. Most people are unconsciously sculpting limitation. They think about what they don't have. They speak about what's wrong. They feel the emotions of lack and fear. And the divine substance faithfully reproduces those patterns in their physical reality. They look at their circumstances and say, "See, this is just how life is for me." But they don't realize they're looking at yesterday's sculpture while simultaneously creating tomorrow's. This is why nothing seems to change for most people. They're stuck in a loop. They observe their current reality, have thoughts and feelings about it, which create more of the same reality, which they observe and have more thoughts and feelings about. Round and round they go, year after year, wondering why they're still in the same place. But you're going to break that loop tonight. You're going to stop letting your current circumstances dictate your thoughts and feelings. You're going to start letting your vision of what's possible dictate your thoughts and feelings, regardless of what you see around you. This is the secret that masters throughout history have known. This is what it means to walk by faith and not by sight. This is how you become a conscious creator instead of an unconscious reactor. Now I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't about pretending your problems don't exist. This isn't about toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing. If you're in pain, acknowledge it. If you're struggling, be honest about it. But don't stop there. Don't set up camp in your struggle and make it your identity. Acknowledge where you are, but don't worship it. Instead, turn your attention to the truth that exists beyond your current experience. There is a higher reality where you are already healed, already abundant, already loved, already free. That's not fantasy. That's not delusion. That's the realm of divine ideas, and it's more real than the physical world you see with your eyes. The physical world is temporary and changeable. The spiritual world is eternal and foundational. When you align your consciousness with spiritual truth, physical circumstances must eventually conform. It's law. It cannot not happen. Think about it this way. Before a building exists physically, it exists as an idea in an architect's mind. That idea is invisible, intangible, but it's absolutely real. And it's actually more real than the building will be, because the building can be destroyed, but the idea remains. Your life works the same way. Everything in your physical experience first existed as an idea, a thought, a vision, and you have the power to change the invisible blueprint, which will then change the visible structure. 2026 is offering you a blank blueprint. Yes, you have history. Yes, you've walked through fire and emerged with scars. But here's what I need you to understand. That history does not own your future. Those scars are not chains. They are proof that you survived, that you endured, that you are still here, still breathing, still capable of more than you've allowed yourself to imagine. This is where most people stumble. They confuse acknowledgement with allegiance. They think that because something happened, because they felt a certain way, because they failed before, they must continue in that pattern. But patterns are not prisons unless you build the walls yourself. And you, right now, in this moment, hold the key to every lock you've ever placed on your own potential. I want you to think about water for a moment. Water doesn't remember the shape of yesterday's container. When you pour it into a glass, it becomes the glass. Pour it into a river, it becomes the river. It doesn't carry the geometry of its past, it adapts, it flows, it becomes what the present moment requires. This is the nature of consciousness itself. You are not a fixed stone monument to your own history. You are water, energy, infinite possibility wearing a temporary form. 2026 is asking you a question, and that question is this: who do you want to become? Not who you think you should be based on other people's expectations. Not who you were trying to be when you were younger and didn't know yourself yet. Who do you, right now, with everything you've learned and everything you've survived, who do you genuinely want to become? Because here's what I've discovered through years of working with the invisible laws that govern our lives. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It doesn't respond to your wishes or your hopes or your desperate midnight prayers. The universe responds to your conviction. It responds to the version of yourself you embody most consistently. If you walk through your days embodying doubt, you will magnetize experiences that confirm that doubt. If you move through the world embodying possibility, you will find doors opening that you didn't even know existed. This isn't mysticism. This is mechanics. This is how consciousness works. You are always broadcasting a signal, and life is always responding to that broadcast. And here's what most people miss. You cannot broadcast abundance while feeling lack. You cannot transmit confidence while dwelling in fear. You cannot radiate prosperity while your inner dialogue is one continuous complaint about bills and limitations. I've watched people affirm prosperity for years, standing in front of mirrors, repeating words they don't believe, and wonder why nothing changes. The words themselves are not magic. The feeling behind them is the transmitter. If you say, "I am abundant," while your stomach churns with anxiety about next month's rent, you're not broadcasting abundance. You're broadcasting anxiety with a thin veneer of positive words over it. Life responds to what you actually feel, not what you pretend to feel. So how do we change the broadcast? How do we shift from a frequency of lack to a frequency of abundance when our current circumstances seem to prove that lack is real? This is where most teachings fall apart. They tell you to just feel abundant without acknowledging that you're currently looking at an empty bank account. They tell you to raise your vibration as if that's as simple as flipping a light switch. But consciousness doesn't work that way. You cannot force yourself to feel something you don't feel. Trying to force positive feelings while suppressing negative ones is like trying to grow a garden by painting the dirt green. You're working with the wrong layer of reality. The shift happens through understanding, not force. When you truly grasp that your current circumstances are the echo of your past consciousness, not a declaration of your permanent reality, something relaxes in you. You stop fighting what is. You stop needing to deny your present situation in order to create a new one. I can acknowledge that my bank account shows a certain number today, while simultaneously knowing that this number is not my identity, not my worth, and not my future. It's simply feedback. It's information about where my consciousness has been, not where it's going. This is what I mean by living from the end. You acknowledge present facts without making them your dwelling place. You see, most people make their current circumstances their prayer. They look at the empty bank account and pray times from times the emptiness. They feel the loneliness and pray times from times the ache. But this only perpetuates the very condition they're trying to escape. It's like standing in a dark room and describing the darkness in vivid detail, hoping somehow the description will create light. I learned to do the opposite. When the rent was due and I had no visible means, I didn't deny the bill existed. That would be foolish. But I refused to let that fact become my inner state. Instead, I would close my eyes and feel the relief, the satisfaction, the quiet joy of being provided for. I would thank the invisible supply before it became visible. I was living from the end of the story, not the middle of the problem. Here's what happens when you truly do this. Your actions change without effort. You stop the frantic grasping. You stop the desperate phone calls and the manipulative schemes. There's a calm that comes over you, and paradoxically, this calm makes you magnetic. People want to help you. Opportunities appear, doors open that you didn't even know existed. I once knew a woman who wanted to marry, but she was consumed with loneliness and fear that she'd never find a partner. Every conversation circled back to her singleness. Every prayer was essentially, "God, I'm so alone, please send someone." She was praying from the problem. I told her what I'm telling you. Live from the end. act as though you are already the woman who is happily partnered. How does she carry herself? What does she think about? She certainly isn't desperate or clingy. She's complete, joyful, open. The woman was skeptical but willing. She stopped talking about being single. She stopped scanning every room for potential partners. She started enjoying her life fully, making plans, decorating her home as though she already shared it with someone she loved. Within months, and I do not exaggerate, she met her husband in the most unexpected way. Was it magic? No, it was law. She changed her inner state, and her outer world rearranged itself to match. This is how the universe operates. This is the mechanics of manifestation that most people never grasp. They're out there pushing, forcing, manipulating circumstances, trying to make things happen through sheer willpower. And they wonder why it feels like swimming upstream. They wonder why everything is such a struggle. But here's what they don't understand. You cannot force the universe to give you what you're vibrationally rejecting. You cannot create wealth while feeling poor. You cannot attract love while feeling unworthy. You cannot manifest health while identifying as sick. The outer world is effect. The inner world is cause, always. I once knew a man who spent years trying to build a successful business. He worked 18-hour days. He networked relentlessly. He studied every strategy, implemented every tactic, and still, his business barely scraped by. One day, exhausted and desperate, he asked me, "What am I doing wrong? I'm doing everything right." I looked at him and said, "Tell me, when you think about your business, what do you feel?" He paused, then admitted, "Honestly, fear. Constant fear that it's going to fail, that I'm going to lose everything." There it was, the invisible barrier. He was working with tremendous effort on the outside while maintaining a consciousness of failure on the inside. And the universe, being the perfect mirror it is, kept reflecting that consciousness back to him. I gave him an assignment. For 30 days, I said, stop trying to make things happen. Instead, spend 15 minutes each morning in complete certainty that your business is already successful. Feel it, see it, know it as done. Then go about your day and let the universe handle the how. He was skeptical. It felt too simple, too passive, but he was desperate enough to try. Within 3 weeks, everything shifted. A former client reached out with a massive contract he'd never pursued. A competitor approached him about a partnership he'd never imagined. New customers seemed to appear from nowhere. Nothing had changed in his strategy. Everything had changed in his consciousness. And that's the secret most people miss. The universe doesn't respond to your actions, it responds to your assumptions. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman who came to me absolutely convinced she was bad with money. Those were her exact words. Every time she received a payment, she would say, "Well, it won't last long, money just slips through my fingers." And what do you think happened? The money slipped through her fingers. Not because of some cosmic punishment, but because she had accepted that statement as her truth. I asked her a simple question. If money were a person, would it want to stay in the home of someone who constantly says it won't stick around? You see, we're speaking to the universe every moment, not just with our words, but with our beliefs, our expectations, our inner dialogue. And the universe is an impersonal force. It doesn't judge your worthiness. It simply says, your word is law in your life. If you declare yourself bad with money, the universe says, so be it. If you declare yourself surrounded by abundance, the universe says, so be it. Sarah began a new practice. Every morning, she would look at herself in the mirror and say, money flows to me easily and constantly. I am a perfect channel for abundance. At first, she felt foolish. The words seemed empty, like lies she was telling herself. But I reminded her, you've been telling yourself lies for years, lies about scarcity, limitation, and unworthiness. Why not tell yourself something that serves you? Within 3 weeks, she received an unexpected tax refund. Within 2 months, she was offered a promotion. Within 6 months, her entire financial situation had transformed, not because she worked harder, but because she had changed the conversation she was having with the universe. This is what I mean by the law of assumption. Your assumptions create a magnetic field around you. They determine what you attract and what you repel. They set the boundaries of what's possible in your experience. This is why a woman who assumes she's always overlooked will find herself invisible in a crowded room. This is why a man who assumes money is hard to come by will work twice as hard for half the reward. Your assumption isn't just a thought, it's a command to the universe. Now, let me show you something remarkable. Your assumptions don't just affect what comes to you. They affect how you perceive what's already here. Two people can walk through the same door, into the same room, at the same moment, and have completely different experiences because they brought different assumptions with them. I once knew a woman who assumed every social gathering would be uncomfortable and awkward. And sure enough, whenever she attended a party, she'd stand in the corner, arms crossed, watching everyone else have a wonderful time. She'd leave early and say, "See? I knew it would be terrible." But here's what she didn't see. 3 different people had tried to start conversations with her. 2 had smiled warmly in her direction. 1 had even saved a seat beside her at dinner. She didn't notice any of it because her assumption had already told her what to see. Your assumption is a filter. It decides what gets through and what gets blocked. It's like wearing tinted glasses. If your glasses are gray, the whole world looks dim, even on the sunniest day. If they're rose-colored, you'll find beauty in places others miss entirely. This is not about positive thinking. This is about the architecture of your reality. Your assumptions are the blueprint. Everything else is just construction. So here's the question you must ask yourself. What am I assuming right now? About my relationships? About my work? About my worthiness? About what's possible for me? Because whatever you're assuming, you're building. You're creating. You're magnetizing. And the universe, in its infinite responsiveness, is saying yes to every single assumption you hold. Most people never examine their assumptions. They inherit them from parents, from culture, from one bad experience that happened 20 years ago. They walk around with assumptions that don't even belong to them, wondering why their life feels like someone else's script. I'll tell you what happens when you start questioning these assumptions. At first, it feels dangerous. It feels like you're dismantling the very foundation you've been standing on. And you are. But here's what they don't tell you. Sometimes, the foundation you've been standing on was never solid ground. Sometimes, it was just familiar quicksand. I had a woman come to me once who believed she couldn't be happy unless she was married. This wasn't even her belief. Originally, it was her grandmother's fear, passed down like a cursed heirloom. Her grandmother had struggled as a single woman in a different era, and that struggle became the family gospel. This woman was successful, surrounded by friends, living a beautiful life, but she walked around with this constant ache of incompleteness because she'd accepted an assumption she'd never examined. When I asked her, "Is this true for you? Not for your grandmother, not for society, for you?" she went silent. It was the first time she'd ever separated her actual experience from the inherited script. Within that silence, something shifted. She realized she wasn't unhappy because she was single. She was unhappy because she'd been taught to be unhappy about being single. There's a universe of difference between the two. You see, assumptions are like invisible architecture. They determine what rooms you think you're allowed to enter, what doors you believe are locked, what floors you assume don't even exist. Most people live their entire lives in the basement of their own consciousness, never once testing the door that leads upstairs. Here's another thing about assumptions. They're self-fulfilling prophecies with incredible commitment. If you assume people can't be trusted, you'll unconsciously select untrustworthy people to prove yourself right. If you assume you're bad with money, you'll make decisions that confirm that identity. If you assume life is a struggle, you'll somehow overlook every easy opportunity that presents itself. The universe is nothing if not accommodating. It will absolutely give you evidence for whatever you're looking for. I've watched people completely transform their financial reality simply by changing the story they tell themselves about money. There was a woman who came to me once, absolutely convinced that wealthy people were somehow morally corrupt. She'd say things like, "Money changes people for the worst, and the rich get richer while the poor suffer." And guess what happened in her life? Every time she got close to a significant sum of money, something would sabotage it. She'd make a poor investment. An unexpected expense would arise. She'd literally find ways to get rid of the money, because deep down, she didn't want to become what she despised. We worked together to rewrite that story. Not by lying to herself, but by finding new evidence. We looked for examples of wealthy people doing tremendous good. We examined how financial stability could actually amplify her generosity rather than diminish it. We replaced "money corrupts" with "money magnifies who I already am." Within 6 months, her income had doubled. Not because the economy changed, not because she suddenly became smarter or more talented, but because she stopped unconsciously sabotaging every opportunity that came her way. This is what I mean when I say your words are not idle things. They're setting the tone for your entire existence. They're instructions you're giving to your subconscious mind, which then goes about proving you right. Now here's where it gets really interesting. You don't just speak one story. You're actually running multiple narratives simultaneously, and sometimes they directly contradict each other. You might say you want love, while simultaneously telling yourself you're unlovable. You might claim you desire success, while secretly believing you don't deserve it. These competing narratives create what I call spiritual static. It's like trying to tune into a radio station while someone's constantly switching the dial. You get fragments of what you want, mixed with interference from what you fear. The result? Confusion. Inconsistent results. That frustrating sense that you're doing everything right but somehow still stuck. The way forward is brutal honesty. You've got to catch yourself in the act of telling these limiting stories. Listen to how you describe your relationships, your health, your capabilities, your future. Are you the hero of your story or the victim? Are you speaking life or speaking limitation? Because here's what I've witnessed time and time again. The words you speak in private become the reality you experience in public. The narrative you rehearse in your mind becomes the script your life follows. I knew a woman who constantly said, "I never get the opportunities others get." She said it so often, it became her identity. And you know what happened? Opportunities would literally present themselves, and she wouldn't see them. Her internal narrative had made her blind to possibility. Her words had created a filter through which she viewed the world, and that filter only let through evidence of her lack. Then one day, after hearing me speak about this principle, she decided to conduct an experiment. For 30 days, she would speak only as if she were the most opportunity-rich person alive. "Opportunities flow to me constantly," she would say. "I recognize and seize the right chances." It felt ridiculous to her at first, like she was lying to herself. But something extraordinary happened around day 12. She was at a coffee shop, and she overheard a conversation between two people at the next table. They were discussing a problem. Their company was facing a problem she knew exactly how to solve. The old version of herself would have stayed silent, thinking, "They wouldn't want to hear from me." But the new narrative she'd been rehearsing kicked in. She politely introduced herself and offered a suggestion. That conversation led to a consulting contract that changed her financial situation entirely. But here's the crucial part. That opportunity was always there. Those conversations were happening around her all the time. What changed wasn't the world. What changed was the story she was telling herself about who she was in that world. Your words are either building bridges or burning them. They're either opening doors or sealing them shut. And the most important audience for your words isn't other people, it's you. You are listening. Your subconscious mind is recording every word, every phrase, every declaration you make about yourself and your life. So I ask you again, what story are you telling? Because that story is busy right now, constructing your tomorrow. Now, you might be thinking, but Florence, what if I've been telling the wrong story for years? What if I've spent decades declaring lack, limitation, illness? Listen to me carefully. The moment you change your word is the moment the universe begins to rearrange itself to match your new declaration. I've seen it happen countless times. A woman came to me once, her face lined with worry, her shoulders bent under invisible burdens. She'd been declaring for 20 years that she would always struggle, that nothing ever worked out for her, that she was unlucky in every area of life. 20 years of negative affirmations, spoken aloud and silently, day after day. I said to her, "Today, we draw a line in the sand. From this moment forward, you speak only your good." She looked at me with doubt in her eyes, but she agreed to try. Every morning, she stood before her mirror and declared, "My good now comes to me in avalanches of abundance. I am a magnet for miracles. Everything I touch prospers." At first, she felt foolish. The words seemed to mock her circumstances, but she persisted. Within 3 weeks, opportunities began to appear. An old debt she'd written off was repaid. A job offer came from an unexpected source. Her health improved. The universe had been waiting, you see, for her permission to bless her. The moment she changed her word, the floodgates opened. This is not magic. This is law, the law of mind in action. Your word is your wand, and you are always casting spells whether you realize it or not. The question is not whether you're using this power. You are, every single day. The question is, are you using it consciously or unconsciously? Are you directing this tremendous force toward your liberation or your limitation? Here's what most people don't understand. Your subconscious doesn't evaluate whether your words are true or false. It doesn't fact-check your declarations against your current reality. It simply accepts what you tell it and begins to manifest accordingly. If you say, "I can never get ahead," your subconscious says, "Very well, let me ensure that remains true." If you say, "Money flows to me easily and constantly," your subconscious responds, "Understood, I'll arrange that." This is why affirmations are not mere repetition, they are reprogramming. You are installing new software into the operating system of your life. And like any good software update, it takes time to fully integrate, but once it does, everything runs more smoothly. Now, I want to address something that stops many people in their tracks. The feeling that affirmations are lies. They say, "But Florence, I don't have money right now. How can I say I am prosperous when my bank account says otherwise?" Listen carefully. You are not lying. You are prophesying. There is a vast difference between denial and declaration. Denial says, "I have no problems." Declaration says, "I have no power that can stand against God's abundance flowing through me." Denial ignores present circumstances. Declaration supersedes them. When you speak your word, you are not describing what is, you are decreeing what shall be. You are calling those things that are not as though they were, and in so doing, you summon them into manifestation. This is not fantasy. This is the ancient law of creation itself. Think of the farmer who plants seeds in barren ground. Does he look at the empty soil and say, "This is pointless, there's nothing here"? No. He sees the harvest before it appears. He speaks confidently of his crop while the field is still bare. And because he maintains that vision, because he acts in accordance with the harvest he knows is coming, the harvest arrives. Your affirmations are seeds. Plant them deeply, water them with feeling, tend them with repetition. And trust that beneath the surface, in the invisible realm where all creation begins, roots are forming and life is stirring. But here's what you must guard against. Affirmations spoken with doubt are seeds planted in poisoned soil. If you say, "I am wealthy," but think immediately after, "Yeah, right, who am I kidding?" you have canceled your own order. You have planted and uprooted in the same breath. This is why feeling is so crucial. The subconscious responds not just to words, but to the emotional charge behind them. When you declare your good with conviction, with a feeling of certainty and gratitude, you activate the creative power within you. The universe, God, divine mind, whatever name you give to this infinite intelligence responds to your faith, not your fear. This is why affirmations work not because they're magic spells, but because they shift your inner conversation. When you say, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my right work, my right place, my right prosperity," you're not begging, you're claiming. You're aligning yourself with the truth of your being. And here's what so many people miss. The feeling matters more than the words. You can recite affirmations all day long, but if underneath them you're feeling doubtful, fearful, resentful, well, that's the message your subconscious receives. That's the vibration you're sending out. It's like trying to tune into a radio station while standing in static. I remember a woman who came to me years ago, desperate for financial relief. She'd been affirming prosperity for months, she said, but nothing had changed. When I asked her to speak her affirmation aloud, she did, but her voice was flat, defeated. Her words said abundance, but her tone said hopelessness. I told her, "My dear, you're not affirming, you're complaining in disguise." We worked together to shift not just what she said, but how she felt when she said it. Instead of, "I need money," or even "money is coming to me," spoken with doubt, she began to declare, "I am a magnet for money. Prosperity flows to me easily and effortlessly." And she practiced feeling it as already true. She imagined the relief, the freedom, the joy. Within weeks, unexpected opportunities appeared. A client she'd forgotten about paid an old invoice. A friend offered her a lucrative project. Doors opened where there had been walls. This isn't coincidence. This is law. The law of mind. the law of cause and effect operating on the invisible plane. Now, I want to address something that trips people up constantly: the waiting. You've done your spiritual work, you've spoken your word, you've held your vision, and then nothing seems to happen. Days pass, weeks pass. The old circumstances remain stubbornly in place. What then? This is where most people falter. They interpret the delay as denial. They think God didn't hear them, or the universe doesn't care, or maybe they're just not worthy after all. And in that moment of doubt, they withdraw their claim. They cancel their own order, so to speak. But here's what's really happening during that waiting period. The invisible is becoming visible. There's a gestation period for every manifestation, just as there's a gestation period for a child in the womb. You don't plant a seed today and expect a tree tomorrow. The work is happening beneath the surface, in the dark, in the unseen realm where all creation begins. You wouldn't dig up the seed every day to check if it's growing. That would destroy the very process you're trying to nurture. Yet this is precisely what we do with our prayers and affirmations. We speak the word, we claim our good, and then 5 minutes later we're digging it up with doubt. Is it working? Why hasn't it happened yet? Maybe I'm not doing it right. This anxious checking is not faith, it's fear masquerading as diligence. True faith plants the seed and walks away in peaceful expectancy. It knows that the laws of the universe are as reliable as the laws of nature. You don't stand over an acorn demanding it become an oak tree by Tuesday. You trust the intelligence within the seed to do what it was designed to do. I learned this lesson powerfully through a woman who came to me desperate for a financial demonstration. She needed money within 2 weeks, or she would lose her home. We spoke the word together. We affirmed that infinite supply was her divine right, that God's abundance was already flowing to her through unexpected channels. And then I gave her the hardest instruction of all. Now you must act as though it's already done. Don't mention this need to anyone. Don't rehearse the problem. Live from the end result. She struggled with this mightily. Every day she wanted to call me and ask if I thought it was working. Every day she had to discipline her mind away from panic and back to praise. She would catch herself calculating how many days were left and have to stop mid-thought and declare, "No, it is already accomplished in the spiritual realm. I rest in that truth." On the 13th day, nothing had appeared. On the 14th day, the morning of her deadline, an attorney contacted her about an inheritance from a distant relative she had never even met. The amount was exactly what she needed, plus a comfortable margin beyond. She hadn't manipulated anything. She hadn't forced a single door. She simply held the vision and let the universe arrange the details. That is the essence of spiritual law you provide, the consciousness, and the infinite provides the channels. I've watched this same principle work through channels so unexpected that the human mind would never have conceived them. A woman needed employment but had been rejected from every position she applied for. She stopped applying and instead began to affirm, "Infinite Spirit, open the perfect door that no man can shut." Within a week, she received a phone call from a company she had interviewed with 2 years prior. They remembered her and had a new position that hadn't even existed when she first applied. The role was ideal, the salary exceeded her request, and the work aligned perfectly with her skills. You see, when you release your word into the invisible, you set forces in motion that are far more intelligent than your limited reasoning. Your intellect can only see the doors directly in front of you. Spirit sees every door in the entire building, including ones that haven't been built yet. This is why I say, never limit the Almighty in your demands. Don't tell God how to do it. Just state clearly what you require and trust the infinite intelligence to handle the how. Your demonstration may come through inheritance, gift, payment, sudden opportunity, or a path so unusual that you would have dismissed it as impossible. I knew a man who needed exactly $3,000 to save his business from bankruptcy. He had 2 days. Every logical avenue had closed. He affirmed his supply with absolute conviction, then released it completely. The next morning, he found an old coat he hadn't worn in years. In the pocket was a winning lottery ticket he had purchased and forgotten about. The prize? $3,000 exactly. Some would call this coincidence. I call it divine order, responding to a consciousness prepared to receive. The universe is not random, it is responsive. It mirrors back to you the nature of your habitual thinking and believing. This is why I'm so insistent about vigilance over your mental atmosphere. You cannot afford to be careless with your consciousness. Every word you speak, every image you entertain, every belief you harbor, these are not idle mental activities. They are creative forces. They are setting into motion the very circumstances you will meet tomorrow. I've watched people sabotage the most wonderful opportunities because they couldn't maintain their vision long enough for it to materialize. They would speak their word, affirm their good, perhaps even see signs of its approach, and then fear would whisper, "But what if it doesn't work?" And in that moment of doubt, they would reverse the entire current of causation. This is not punishment from an angry universe. This is simply law. If you plant corn, you cannot expect wheat. If you plant faith one moment and fear the next, you create confusion in the creative medium. You send mixed signals, and the universe, always obedient, must wait for a clear command. Your consistency determines your results, not your occasional affirmations, not your Sunday prayers. Your habitual, persistent, unshakable alignment with what you claim to desire. I knew a woman who wanted desperately to marry, yet every conversation she had was filled with complaints about men. "They're all unreliable," she would say. "You can't trust any of them." She would attend my talks, affirm that her perfect partner was coming, then spend her afternoons with friends rehearsing every relationship disappointment she'd ever witnessed. She was working against herself at every turn. I finally said to her, "You are building a wall with your words and then praying for a door. You must stop. Speak only what you wish to see manifested. If you cannot say something constructive about relationships, say nothing at all." It took discipline, but she began to monitor her speech. She stopped participating in negative conversations. She blessed every happy couple she saw. She affirmed, "I see love everywhere, and love sees me." Within months, she met a man who exceeded every hope she'd secretly held but been afraid to voice. This is the divine order of things. When you align your inner world with what you seek, the outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match. It's not magic, it's metaphysical law, as reliable as gravity. But here's what most people miss. The work isn't in getting what you want. The work is in becoming the person who already has it. There's a vibration to having, and there's a different vibration to wanting. Wanting pushes things away. Having draws them near. I've seen this play out in every area of life. A woman came to me once, desperate for financial security. She'd been raised in poverty, and even though she'd worked herself into a comfortable position, she couldn't shake the terror that it would all disappear. Every paycheck, she'd panic. Every expense, she'd calculate with white knuckles. "I can't afford to relax," she told me. "The moment I stop worrying about money, it'll vanish." I asked her, "Do you truly believe you live in a universe that cruel? That the only thing standing between you and ruin is your constant anxiety?" She paused. The question had never occurred to her. "Your fear isn't protecting you," I explained. "It's instructing the universe to send you more things to fear. You're praying for poverty every time you panic. You're affirming lack with every worried thought." We changed her inner conversation immediately. Instead of, "I can't afford this," she began saying, "I am bountifully supplied." Instead of checking her bank balance with dread, she'd look at it and say, "Thank you for this abundant provision and for all that's coming." She started treating money that came to her, whether a paycheck or a found quarter, as proof of an inexhaustible supply. The shift wasn't instant, but it was inevitable. Unexpected checks arrived. A side opportunity materialized. Her salary increased without her asking. But more than the money itself, her relationship with it transformed. She moved from scarcity to sovereignty. This is what I mean by preparation of the soul. You cannot clutch and receive at the same time. Your hands must be open. Your heart must be spacious. You must trust that what is yours will find you, and what isn't was never meant to be held. This is the spiritual law of vacuum. You cannot receive what you're unwilling to release. I've watched people suffocate their own blessings. They cling to the old job that drains them, terrified to step into uncertainty, and wonder why the better opportunity never materializes. They hold on to relationships that have run their course, afraid of loneliness, and the universe cannot deliver the love that's meant for them because there's simply no room. You see, the spiritual realm operates on exact principles. It's not sentimental. It's not going to squeeze your good into an already crowded life. It waits for you to make space, to demonstrate through action, not just words, that you're ready. I knew a woman who wanted to be a writer. She talked about it endlessly. She bought journals, attended workshops, spoke of her future book with passionate conviction. But her apartment was filled with chaos, piles of magazines she'd never read, clothes she'd never wear, furniture from a life she'd outgrown. Every surface was cluttered, every closet was stuffed. And that book? It never came. The words wouldn't flow because energetically there was nowhere for them to land. One day, after a particularly difficult season, she made a decision. She spent 3 weeks releasing, donating, discarding, clearing. She created physical space. And something miraculous happened. The moment her environment opened up, so did her creative channels. Within months, she'd written more than she had in the previous 5 years. This isn't coincidence. This is law. When you release, you send a clear signal to the universe. I am ready. I trust. I am making room for what's next. And the universe responds to that frequency immediately. It must. It's compelled by its own nature to fill a vacuum. But here's what most people miss. The release must be genuine. You cannot trick the spiritual realm. You cannot throw things away while secretly resenting the loss, while gripping them emotionally. True release is peaceful. It's clean. It says, I bless this and let it go. I trust something better is on its way. Consider water. It never clings to the rocks it passes. It never says, but I've been here so long, this rock feels safe. It flows forward, trusting the river, trusting the path, trusting the ocean that awaits. And because it flows freely, it stays fresh, it stays alive. You are meant to flow the same way. You were never meant to hold on to money with a clenched fist. You were meant to let it move through you, from you, to you in a beautiful, unending rhythm. I've seen people who made $100 and clutched it like it was their last breath. And I've seen people who made $100 and gave half of it away with joy. Guess which one ended up with more? The one who gave. Because the universe reads your actions as a language. When you hold tight, you say, there is not enough. When you give freely, you say, I trust. I know more is coming. And the universe always answers in kind. Now, I'm not telling you to be reckless. I'm not telling you to give away money you need for rent or food. But I am telling you that when you give from a place of love and trust, not obligation or fear, you set something powerful in motion. You stop being a dam. You become a channel. And channels are always filled. I once knew a woman who tithed faithfully, no matter what. Even when she didn't know where the next month's bills would come from. She said to me, Florence, I give because I believe God is my supply, not my paycheck. And do you know what happened? Every single time she gave, something came back. Not always money. Sometimes it was an opportunity. Sometimes a gift. Sometimes a door opened that had been closed for years. She never went without. Not once. Because she understood the law. Asterisk. What you give, you receive. Asterisk. But here's the part most people miss: you can't give in order to get. That's manipulation, not circulation. You give because it feels right. You give because it's an expression of your faith. You give because you know, deep in your bones, that you are connected to an infinite source. When you give that way, you don't keep score. You don't check your bank account the next day expecting a miracle deposit. You just live. You just flow. And the money flows too. Think of it this way. Every dollar you spend or give is a seed. If you plant it with resentment, with fear, with the belief that you'll never have enough, what do you think will grow? More lack, more fear, more resentment. But if you plant it with gratitude, with joy, with the certainty that there's always more where that came from, you plant abundance. And abundance always multiplies. Now, I've seen people hoard. I've seen people grip their money so tight their knuckles go white. They say they're being careful. They say they're being responsible. But what they're really saying is, asterisk, I don't trust life to provide for me again. Asterisk. And you know what happens? Life agrees with them. Because the universe always says yes to what you truly believe. If you believe there's scarcity, you'll find scarcity. If you believe you must cling and control, you'll spend your whole life exhausted from the effort of holding on. But the person who gives freely, who tips generously, who helps without counting the cost, who shares their gifts without demanding immediate return, that person operates from a different law entirely. They operate from the law of circulation. And circulation is the very heartbeat of prosperity. Think of a river. A healthy river flows. It gives constantly. It nourishes the land, sustains life, moves forward with power and grace. But a river that stops flowing becomes stagnant. It becomes a swamp, dead water. Your prosperity is meant to flow like that river. In and out, receiving and giving, inhaling and exhaling. The moment you try to dam it up, the moment you stop the flow out of fear, you cut yourself off from the flow coming in. I once knew a woman who came to me in desperation. She had money in the bank, not much, but enough for several months. Yet she was paralyzed with terror. She couldn't spend a penny without anxiety. She rationed everything. She denied herself every small pleasure. She was living like a pauper while her bank account sat untouched. I asked her a simple question. What are you saving it for? She looked at me, startled. For emergencies, for security, for when things get worse. So you're planning for things to get worse? I said. You're rehearsing disaster in your mind every single day and then wondering why you feel so afraid. She had never thought of it that way. She believed she was being prudent, but she was actually practicing poverty consciousness with every fearful thought. She looked at me, stunned. But what should I do instead? She asked. Practice prosperity, I told her. Start seeing yourself as already provided for. When a fearful thought comes, replace it immediately with a statement of abundance. Within 3 months, she had not only found work, but had been offered 2 positions simultaneously. She told me later that the shift happened the moment she stopped preparing for disaster and started expecting good. This is the power of our habitual thought patterns. Whatever we practice in consciousness becomes our reality. I knew a man who was always saying, "I never have any luck." And indeed, luck seemed to avoid him entirely. One day I said to him, "Of course you have no luck. You've just declared it. Your words are your wands. You're casting spells against yourself." He laughed at first, but then he agreed to try an experiment. For 30 days, he would say instead, "I am extraordinarily lucky. Good fortune follows me everywhere." He felt foolish saying it at first, but he persisted. And before the month was out, he had received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative he had barely known. "I can't believe my luck," he exclaimed. "Now you're getting it," I said. "Your luck changed when your words changed." You see, the universe doesn't argue with you. It simply says yes to whatever you're declaring. If you say life is hard, life says, "Yes, it is." If you say life is good, life says, "Yes, it is." You are the architect of your experience through the words you speak and the thoughts you think habitually. Most people do not realize they are under a spell of their own making. They walk around saying, "I can't afford that. I'm so tired. Nothing ever works out for me. I always get sick in winter." And then they wonder why life reflects these declarations back to them. Break the spell. Begin speaking a new language, the language of faith, of abundance, of divine supply. Now, I want to share with you a practice that completely transformed my understanding of speaking with power. I call it speaking to the situation, not from it. Most people speak from their circumstances. They look at the empty bank account and say, "I'm broke." They look at the diagnosis and say, "I'm sick." They look at the relationship and say, "I'm alone." They're reporting what they see, and in doing so, they're giving it permanence. But the master speaks to the situation, not from it. You don't deny what appears to be true, but you don't give it authority over what is divinely true. I worked with a woman whose business was failing. Every conversation was about how bad things were, how customers weren't coming, how the economy was against her. She was speaking from her situation, broadcasting failure, sealing her fate with every complaint. I said to her, "Stop describing the problem and start declaring the solution. Speak to your business as if it were a garden that needs different seeds." She began to say, "Divine ideas come to me. The right customers are drawn to my business. Infinite intelligence guides every decision I make. Prosperity is my divine inheritance, and I claim it now." Within 3 months, everything shifted. Not because the economy changed, but because she stopped watering the weeds with her words and started planting new seeds. This is what it means to have dominion. You don't control circumstances through force, you transform them through the higher law of your spoken word aligned with truth. Jesus demonstrated this perfectly. He didn't say to the fig tree, "You look pretty barren." He spoke to it, "No fruit shall grow on thee henceforward forever." He He didn't discuss the storm with the disciples. He spoke to the storm. Peace, be still. He addressed the situation with authority, and the situation had no choice but to obey. You have this same authority. Every word you speak is either building your kingdom or tearing it down. Most people don't realize they're in a conversation with the universe every single day. And the universe is listening to every word. It's not judging you, it's obeying you. When you say, I can't afford that, the universe says, you're right. When you say, nothing ever works out for me, the universe says, consider it done. When you say, I'm always struggling, the universe arranges circumstances to prove you correct. You think you're just venting, just expressing how you feel. But you're actually giving orders. This is why complaining is so dangerous. It's not just negative, it's creative. Every complaint is a decree. Every time you rehearse your problems out loud, you're commissioning more of the same. You're directing the universe to produce additional evidence of your struggle. I've watched people talk themselves into poverty, into sickness, into loneliness, and they had no idea they were doing it. They thought they were just being honest. But honesty without wisdom is destruction. There was a woman who came to me once, overwhelmed with debt. Every time we met, she would list her bills, name by name, amount by amount. She knew them all by heart. She could tell you to the penny what she owed. And I finally said to her, you've memorized your debts. You visit them every day like old friends. Why don't you memorize your supply instead? Why don't you become as familiar with your abundance as you are with your lack? She looked at me like I'd suggested something impossible. But I gave her a new assignment. Stop naming your debts. Start naming your blessings. Get just as detailed with what's working as you've been with what's failing. Within 3 months, unexpected money came from 5 different directions. Not because the universe suddenly decided to be nice, but because she stopped ordering poverty and started ordering prosperity. She changed the conversation. Now, I want to address something that trips people up constantly: the gap between the order and the delivery. You place your order with the universe, you start speaking differently, you're doing the work, and then nothing happens. Days pass, weeks pass, and you panic. You think, see, I knew it wouldn't work. I knew I was fooling myself. And in that moment of panic, you cancel your order. It's like calling a restaurant, placing your order, and then hanging up halfway through because the food didn't appear instantly in your hand. Then you call back and complain that the restaurant doesn't work. The universe heard you the first time. But doubt is a cancellation slip. Every time you say, but what if it doesn't happen, you're calling back to cancel. Every time you check your bank account with anxiety rather than expectancy, you're revising your order back to poverty. Every time you tell someone, I'm trying to manifest but nothing's working, you just voided the whole transaction. The waiting period isn't proof that it's not working. The waiting period is where your faith is being tested not by some cruel cosmic judge, but by your own subconscious patterns fighting for survival. Your old story doesn't want to die. It will throw everything at you to get you to speak the old words again, think the old thoughts, return to the familiar suffering. This is why persistence in your new speech is everything. I knew a man who'd been unemployed for over a year. He started speaking his new truth. My perfect work manifests now. I am guided to the right position. He said it every morning. He said it every night. 3 weeks in, he got a rejection from a job he really wanted. His instinct was to collapse back into, I'll never find anything. I'm unhireable. Instead, he caught himself. He said out loud, that wasn't my perfect work. My perfect work manifests now. 2 days later, a former colleague called him out of the blue about a position he didn't even know existed. Better pay, better conditions, better fit than anything he'd applied for. The rejection wasn't proof of failure, it was redirection. But only because he didn't cancel his order with his words. Here's what I need you to understand. The universe is always saying yes, always. It's saying yes to whatever you're consistently speaking and believing. If you're speaking lack, it says yes to lack. If you're speaking prosperity, it says yes to prosperity. And here's what most people miss. The subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, well, that's not realistic, or that's too big for you. It simply accepts. It's neutral. It's like soil, it doesn't judge the seed you plant. Plant thorns, you get thorns. Plant roses, you get roses. So, when you declare something with faith, when you speak your word with conviction, the subconscious goes to work immediately. It begins to arrange circumstances, attract opportunities, align you with the very thing you've declared, not because you've earned it through struggle, but because you've accepted it through faith. I've seen this happen over and over again. A woman comes to me drowning in debt, speaking constantly about how broke she is, how bills keep piling up, how she'll never get ahead. And I tell her, stop watering that weed. Stop feeding that story. You're giving it all your energy, all your creative power. Instead, I have her begin to declare, I am a channel for infinite abundance. Money flows to me easily and constantly. I am open and receptive to unexpected income. At first, she feels ridiculous saying it. It feels like lying. But I remind her you've been lying the other way for years, telling yourself you're poor when the truth is, you're connected to an infinite source. Within weeks, things begin to shift. Not because she worked harder, but because she changed the instruction she was giving to her subconscious mind. An unexpected check arrives. A new opportunity presents itself. Someone repays an old debt she'd forgotten about. The universe begins to rearrange itself according to her new word. This is the power of working with the law instead of against it. Most people are working against it all day long, speaking defeat, expecting failure, affirming limitation. And then they wonder why life feels so hard. But when you align your words with truth, with the reality that you are one with infinite substance, that divine intelligence is guiding you, that everything you need is already provided, everything changes. Not someday. Now. The moment you shift your word, the creative process begins. Let me tell you about a woman who came to me absolutely convinced she was too old to start over. 57 years old, she said, and her life had fallen apart. Her marriage had ended. Her savings were depleted. And she kept repeating this death sentence. It's too late for me. I'm too old. My time has passed. I stopped her right there. Your time has passed? I said. According to whom? Who made that rule? Show me the cosmic law that says you expire at 57. She couldn't, of course, because it doesn't exist. What does exist is the hypnotic spell we cast over ourselves with these limiting pronouncements. Every time she said, I'm too old, she was instructing the universe to show her evidence of her obsolescence. And the universe, being the perfect servant, complied. Doors closed. Opportunities vanished. Even her physical energy began to match her declaration. So I gave her new words. I am in the prime of my wisdom. I am beginning the most powerful chapter of my life. Everything I've lived through has prepared me for what's coming now. At first, she could barely say them without crying. They felt like lies. But I told her what I'm telling you. You don't have to believe them yet. You just have to say them. Faith follows the spoken word, not the other way around. Within 3 months, she had started a small consulting business using the expertise she'd gained over decades. Within a year, she was earning more than she ever had in her previous career. And she kept saying to me, I can't believe I almost gave up. I can't believe I thought it was over. But I could believe it, because I've seen this pattern 1,000 times. We think the limitation is external, our age, our circumstances, our past failures. But the limitation is always in the word we're speaking over our lives. Here's what makes this so simultaneously frustrating and hopeful. You are 1 sentence away from a completely different future. 1 sentence. Not 1 year. Not 1 major life change. 1 shift in the words you speak to yourself and about yourself. I am always guided instead of, I'm so lost. Money flows to me easily instead of, I can never get ahead. I am exactly where I need to be instead of, I've wasted so much time. These aren't just prettier ways of thinking. They are instructions to the creative power that's listening to every word you say. And here's what most people miss. You don't have to believe it at first. You don't have to feel convinced. You don't have to have proof in your bank account or your calendar or your relationships before you start speaking differently. You just have to be willing to plant a different seed. Because the law doesn't respond to your doubt, it responds to your word. I've watched people completely transform their lives, not because they had a sudden burst of confidence, but because they got stubborn about the words they were willing to repeat. One woman came to me drowning in debt, convinced she was cursed with poverty. I didn't try to talk her out of her fear. I just gave her 1 sentence to say every morning and every night. My supply is endless, and it comes from God. She didn't believe it. She told me so, but she said it anyway. Within 2 months, An old friend offered her a business partnership. Within 6 months, she had paid off half her debt. Within a year, she was living in a way she hadn't dared to imagine. Did the universe suddenly decide to bless her? No. She stopped instructing it to withhold. She stopped declaring lack. She started speaking supply. And supply answered. This is the part where people get tripped up. They think the work is in the feeling. They think they have to generate some elevated emotion or fake it till they make it. But the work is simply in the word. The feeling follows the word. The manifestation follows the word. You are not trying to convince yourself. You are giving orders to the infinite creative mind that takes every word as law. So when you say, I am always supported, you're not lying to yourself. You're legislating your experience. When you say, everything is working out for my highest good, you're not being naive. You're being precise. You're not hoping. You're not wishing. You're not begging. You're decreeing. And when you decree, you're speaking from the throne room of your own divine authority. You're saying, this is done. This is already mine. I see it. I claim it. I accept it now. No wobbling. No second guessing. No maybe tomorrow. You plant your flag in the invisible, and you don't move it. This is where most people lose the game. They speak the word, and then they turn around and speak another word. They declare abundance, then complain about bills. They claim health, then gossip about their symptoms. They affirm love, then rehearse every wrong that's been done to them. Your word is your wand, but you keep waving it in opposite directions. Stop canceling your own orders. You wouldn't place an order at a restaurant, then run into the kitchen and snatch it back, would you? You wouldn't plant a seed, dig it up every morning to see if it's growing, and then replant it somewhere else. But that's exactly what you do with your spoken word when you contradict yourself. The universe doesn't punish you for this, it just gets confused. It says, well, which command do you actually want me to follow? So it waits. It watches. It listens for the command you repeat most often, with the most feeling, with the most conviction. And that's the one it obeys. If you spend 5 minutes affirming prosperity and 5 hours worrying about money, guess which instruction you just gave? If you declare perfect health once and complain about your body 20 times a day, which message do you think is being received? Your word is only as powerful as your consistency. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you have to be vigilant. It means you catch yourself when you're about to speak against your good. You pause, you pivot, you return to your decree. No, that's not my word. My word is this. And you say it again, and again, and again. Not from force, not from fear, but from knowing. Because every time you speak your word, you're watering that seed. You're feeding that vision. You're strengthening that bridge between the invisible and the visible. And one day, maybe suddenly, maybe gradually, you'll look up and see it standing right in front of you. The thing you claimed, the life you decreed. And you won't be surprised. Because deep down, you knew it all along. You see, there's something I must tell you about the nature of knowing. Real knowing, the kind that sits in your bones before your mind ever catches up. I've watched people spend years running from what they already know. They'll consult everyone, friends, family, strangers on the street, asking for advice they won't take, seeking permission they don't need. And all the while, there's this quiet voice inside saying, I already know what I must do. Why do we do this? Why do we doubt the wisdom that lives within us? Because we've been trained to distrust ourselves. We've been taught that truth comes from outside, from books, from experts, from anyone but the still, small voice within. But I'm here to tell you, that voice is God speaking. That knowing is divine intelligence, and it knows your way better than any earthly counselor ever could. I remember a woman who came to me once, wringing her hands, asking what she should do about her business partner. She listed all the warning signs, the dishonesty, the manipulation, the constant drain on her peace of mind. And when she finished, I asked her simply, what do you know you must do? Her face changed immediately. I know I must end the partnership, she said. I've known for months. Then why are you here? I asked gently. Because I wanted you to tell me I was wrong, she admitted. I wanted you to give me some spiritual technique that would fix him, fix the situation, fix everything without me having to do the hard thing. There it is, the heart of the matter. We seek counsel not for wisdom, but for permission to avoid what we already know. But the universe doesn't work that way. Your knowing is your marching orders. When you know, you must act. To know and not act is to create a terrible conflict within yourself. A war between truth and fear, between your higher self and your resistance. And that war will exhaust you faster than any external battle ever could. Here's what I've learned. The moment you honor what you know, the very moment you step in the direction of your inner truth, the universe rushes to support you. Doors open, resources appear. The way becomes clear. But you must take the first step in faith. You must honor the knowing before you see the evidence. This is the walk of the spiritual warrior. Not charging into battle with blind courage, but moving forward with quiet certainty, trusting the wisdom within. Your inner knowing is never wrong. It may be inconvenient, it may be uncomfortable, it may require you to make changes you've been avoiding, but it is never wrong. So stop asking what you already know. Stop seeking permission to trust yourself. The voice of God is speaking through your deepest knowing, and it's time you listened. Your intuition doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. It doesn't need to justify its wisdom or explain its methods. It simply knows, and that knowing is enough. I've watched people ignore their intuition for years, following everyone else's advice, consulting every expert, reading every book, trying to figure out the logical path forward. And where does it get them? Exhausted, confused, further from their truth than when they started. Then finally, in a moment of desperation or surrender, they listen to that quiet voice they've been silencing. They make the move they always knew they needed to make. They have the conversation they've been avoiding. They take the risk that terrified them, and suddenly, everything shifts. Not because the external circumstances magically changed, but because they finally aligned with their own inner truth. The universe has been trying to guide you all along, through hunches, through feelings, through that persistent thought that won't leave you alone, through the doors that keep opening and the ones that keep closing, no matter how hard you push. But you've been too busy consulting everyone else's compass to trust your own. Here's what I know. Every single time you've ignored your intuition, you've regretted it. Every time you've talked yourself out of that knowing, you've ended up wishing you'd listened. Every time you've chosen logic over instinct, safety over truth, you've paid a price. And every time you've trusted that inner voice, even when it made no sense, even when everyone thought you were crazy, it's led you exactly where you needed to go. Your intuition isn't random. It's not wishful thinking. It's not fear disguised as guidance. It's the voice of your highest self, connected to the infinite intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and grows trees from seeds. It knows things your conscious mind hasn't figured out yet. It sees patterns you can't logically perceive. It understands timing in ways your impatient ego never will. When you get that clear, unmistakable knowing, that's not something to question. That's something to honor. Stop waiting for more information. Stop needing it to make sense. Stop requiring external validation before you trust what you already know. The answer is already within you. It's been there all along. And the moment you stop seeking it everywhere else is the moment you finally find it. You see, we've been taught to believe that spiritual truth is complicated, that it requires years of study, initiations, secret teachings, layers upon layers of understanding. We chase after gurus and teachers, hoping they'll hand us the key we've been missing. But here's what I've discovered through my own journey. The truth is stunningly simple. It's so simple that our complicated minds often reject it at first. We think, it can't be that easy. There must be more to it. And yet, every great spiritual master throughout history has pointed to the same simple truth. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you, not somewhere far off in the clouds, not after you die, not after you've earned enough spiritual credits, within you, right now. Buddha taught that you are already enlightened. You don't become enlightened. You simply recognize what has always been true. The mystics, the sages, the awakened ones, they all discovered the same thing. There is nothing to add to you. There is nothing broken that needs fixing. There is only something to remove the false beliefs that cover over your true nature like dust on a mirror. When I first grasped this, really grasped it, I felt both relieved and slightly foolish. All those years of searching, and the answer was sitting right here in my own being. It's like that old story of the person who searches the world for treasure, only to return home and find it buried in their own backyard. The journey wasn't wasted, though. Sometimes we need to exhaust every other option before we're willing to look within. Sometimes we need to try 100 different methods, read 1,000 different books, before we finally stop and ask, what if everything I need is already here? This is why affirmations work. This is why speaking the word has power. Not because we're creating something out of nothing, but because we're finally aligning our conscious mind with what our deeper self has always known to be true. When you affirm, I am prosperous, you're not trying to convince the universe to make you prosperous. You're reminding yourself of your inherent connection to infinite supply. You're clearing away the mental blocks that have been damming up the flow. When you declare, I am loved, you're not begging for love. You're recognizing that love is your very essence. You're opening yourself to see the love that has always been present. This understanding transforms your entire relationship with the world. You stop chasing, you stop performing, you stop trying to earn your place in the universe. Instead, you begin to recognize what already is. I've seen people spend decades building walls around their hearts, convinced they needed protection from a hostile world. But when they finally understood their true nature, when they truly grasped that they were expressions of divine love, those walls dissolved like morning mist. Not because they forced them down, but because they recognized there was nothing to protect against. The universe doesn't withhold, you do. The universe doesn't judge, you do. The universe doesn't say you're unworthy, you do. Every limitation you experience is a limitation you've accepted. Every boundary you encounter is a boundary you've drawn. This isn't about blame, it's about power. If you created the prison, you hold the key. Now, some will say this sounds too simple. They'll point to circumstances, to difficulties, to very real challenges. And yes, circumstances exist. But circumstances are effects, not causes. They're the shadows, not the light. When you change what you're declaring about yourself, when you shift your inner conversation, the outer world must rearrange itself to match. This is law, not wishful thinking. I remember a woman who came to me drowning in debt. Every affirmation felt like a lie. I am prosperous seemed like mockery when bill collectors called daily. But I told her what I'm telling you now. Speak it anyway. Not to convince the universe, it doesn't need convincing. Speak it to convince yourself. Speak it until your consciousness shifts. Speak it until you feel the truth of it more strongly than you feel the evidence against it. Within 6 months, everything changed. Not because magic happened. Because she stopped identifying with lack. She stopped rehearsing poverty. She stopped giving power to the appearance of limitation. And when her consciousness changed, opportunities appeared that had been invisible before. Your declarations aren't creating reality from nothing. They're aligning you with reality as it already exists in its highest form. This is why I always say, living in the consciousness of abundance is not wishful thinking. It's spiritual law in action. You're not pretending money is in your bank account when it isn't. You're recognizing that the universe is a source of unlimited supply, and you're opening yourself to receive from that source. There's a profound difference between denial and declaration. Denial says, I'm not really broke because I'm pretending I'm rich. Declaration says, I may have only pennies today, but I stand in the awareness that infinite supply flows through me, and I make myself available to receive. The woman who lived in lack consciousness could have $1 million deposited into her account tomorrow, and within months, she'd find a way to return to poverty. The woman who lives in abundance consciousness could lose everything today and rebuild it all because her wealth isn't in her circumstances, it's in her consciousness. I've watched this principle work in my own life countless times. When I've held firmly to the truth of divine supply, even when appearances screamed otherwise, the universe has always made a way where there seemed to be no way. The job offer that came out of nowhere, the unexpected refund, the debt forgiven, the opportunity that opened just when I needed it most. These weren't coincidences. They were the outpicturing of consciousness. And here's what I want you to understand as we close. You don't need to have perfect faith to begin. You don't need to believe with absolute certainty. You simply need to be willing to try. Start with one declaration, one affirmation, one moment of choosing a different thought. Say it, even if you don't believe it yet. Say it, especially if you don't believe it yet. I am a magnet for financial miracles. Infinite supply flows to me now. I release all fear of lack and embrace divine abundance. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue. It simply accepts what you persistently declare and begins to align your life accordingly. This is the game. This is how you win. Not by working harder, though inspired action has its place. Not by worrying more intensely about money, though that's what most people do. You win by changing the conversation in your mind. By speaking to yourself the way infinite intelligence speaks to you, with love, with abundance, with absolute assurance that you are provided for.